All right, CBS News Chief White House correspondent Major Garrett is in San Jose, California, where Trump is holding a rally a little later on tonight. Major, instead of attacking Hillary Clinton and President Obama in a swing state, Trump chose to do it in California. And we're talking about a state that hasn't voted Republican since the 80s. But this is actually part of his strategy to target these states that haven't gone Republican in a long time, isn't it?
It is. But when we use the word strategy, we need to reimagine it when it comes to Trump, because Trump does things and believes he has a capability of doing things that don't conform to any strategy that has been seen in modern American politics. I don't think I'm stating anything that isn't already obvious. And what I mean by that in the sense of California is this: wherever Trump is, he commands national attention. And that's unusual. A lot of times presidential campaigns at this stage would target swing states and go only there because they need to work those local media markets, rally the supporters there, et cetera, et cetera. Trump really doesn't have a strategy built around that kind of ground game or localized support. He is a national media figure perpetually, and wherever he goes, he draws sustained national media attention. So from their perspective, whether it's California or Ohio or Florida or Iowa or New Hampshire or other more traditional swing states, they know they're going to get their message out one way or the other. Here's the other truth. 2 or 3 weeks ago, before this nomination battle came to an end, when Ted Cruz and John Kasich dropped out, the Trump campaign had an elaborate campaign schedule built around imagining this entire pursuit of the nomination running through June 7th and the final primaries. What was the biggest prize on that calendar? California. So you're also just seeing them basically carry out the schedule they already had and not revamping it for a national campaign that began sooner than they expected. So you have the kind of different strategic approach that the Trump campaign has, knowing it can command national attention wherever it goes, and sort of relying on the schedule that they had a couple, 3 weeks ago and saying, well, there it is, let's follow through.
Major, Donald Trump took objection after President Obama waded forcefully into the race yesterday. Let's take a listen to one of the things he had to say.
When somebody says, like the person you just mentioned, who I'm not going to advertise for, that he's going to bring all these jobs back. Well, how exactly are you going to do that? What are you going to do? There's no answer to it. He just says, well, I'm going to negotiate a better deal. Well, how exactly are you going to negotiate that? What magic wand do you have? And usually the answer is he doesn't have an answer.
All right, Major, as you know, President Obama has sort of been on the sidelines, not naming Donald Trump by name. Trump responded later saying President Obama doesn't have a clue and that he'd hit Obama the same way he hit Bill Clinton if he continued. But as you know, President Obama's approval numbers are rising. Is picking a fight with the sitting president one that will work?
It works for Trump partisans and it works for general Republican partisans. Does it work in a general election campaign remains to be seen. And for Trump, the attention from President Obama, though critical, is still good for him because it makes him more central to the conversation. And to be fair to Trump in one respect, when the president says he has no answer about getting jobs back, that in some measure is true. And if you're going to negotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, with Mexico and Canada, for example, you'd have to have willingness by the Mexican government and the Canadian government to renegotiate NAFTA. No sign of that. So that is incomplete when Trump talks about jobs and bringing them back. But he does have some degree of specifics when it comes to keeping jobs here and discouraging American-based firms from taking jobs in the country now and moving them to Mexico. And what he says is, I will increase their tariffs. I will slap tariffs on them right away to make sure they know any product that they sell from Mexico into America, if they move there, will be taxed at a much higher level, and that will discourage them from moving those jobs to Mexico or anywhere else outside of America. So in that one respect, Trump has an answer. Now, there are plenty of economists who say that will provoke either a trade war or it will raise costs for consumers as they buy those goods. There'll be a lot of downside, negative economic effects. Be that as it may, Trump still has an answer there. So the president's criticism in one way is accurate, but in other ways doesn't give Trump his due, because whether you agree or disagree with this idea of punishing American companies who may want to move their jobs to another country, at least Trump has some specific ideas that he has offered.
Major, let's look at the general election. The Republican Party knows it has to woo Hispanic voters, but most recently we've seen the head of the Hispanic media relations for the RNC say that she's going to resign at the end of the month. Reportedly, she told colleagues that she doesn't feel comfortable working for Trump. He certainly attacked some prominent Hispanic political and legal figures. How do you think, does he still think he'll be able to corral the Hispanic vote come November?
He believes he can, but the evidence is hard to come by. A Gallup poll taken in March, and there's been plenty of Trump rhetoric since March, showed almost 75% of Hispanics in this country and nearly 60% of who identified them as Republicans viewed Trump unfavorably. Now, Elaine Keano, our colleague, has talked, obviously, and we teed it up in the introduction to this broadcast, some Hispanics in America who are lock solid with Donald Trump. So you don't want to overgeneralize, but the statistics indicate there is a very steep hill to climb. You talked about criticism of Susana Martinez, the Republican governor of New Mexico. Trump went to Albuquerque, went right after her. Why? Because she hadn't endorsed Trump quite yet. That rankled many Hispanic Republicans. And then going after Gonzalo Curiel, the federal judge who is overseeing the Trump University case. That's highly unusual in two respects. One, he went out of his way to say, well, he might be a Mexican. He was born in Indiana to parents of Mexican descent. And then also just criticizing the independent judiciary. That rankled and rattled Republicans on a couple of different levels, not only about ethnic sensitivities, but sensitivity to an independent judiciary and checks and balances in the American system. All of that sort of left Republicans feeling, if they weren't already, a little bit uneasy about Trump. So in this broader context, Trump has rhetoric that he says, oh, I love Hispanics, they're going to love me. The evidence is very hard to come by. And instances like this resignation at the RNC, the woman involved is going to go work for a super PAC dedicated to protecting Republicans in the House and Senate, speak to another trend in Republican ranks. If you can't be for Trump, be for other Republicans in vital races for the House and Senate, and you may see that trend accelerate if Trump doesn't turn this around.
All right, Major Garrett in San Jose, California. Major, thank you very much.
Sure.